Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Roberta Suzette Hunt. I use she, her pronouns. Welcome to the December meeting of the Equity Advisory Group for the Interstate Bridge Project. Closed captions will be in English and Spanish. English closed captions are both in Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. Go to ibr.news/captions. Reminders, we encourage EAG members to turn on your video. Please say your name when you begin to speak. If you experience technical difficulties, please contact program staff at 360-329-6744. EAG Public Comment instructions. There will be an opportunity to provide brief public input to EAG later in the meeting today. To submit input after the meeting, email comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. Our agenda. So we'll start with our 5:40 we will talk about our tolling, then go into a presentation and feedback for community benefits recommendations for equity objectives, mobility and accessibility and physical design categories. We'll then talk about equity performance measures, have public comment, and close. All right, so for entrance, your name, pronouns, your affiliation, and your icebreaker. What is your favorite winter tradition? All right. Who would like to start? I kind of just want to say, Meg. Oh. Oh, you can't unmute. Oh no. No, oh no. Okay, well, there she is.
Okay. Yes. Hello, my name is Meg Johnson. I'm a Clark County resident here in that capacity. For work, I am the City of Vancouver Special Events Specialist with Parks and Recreation and Cultural Services team. I celebrate Yule. So I like to light a Yule log and try to experience as much light as possible during the darkest times of winter. So that's definitely my favorite winter tradition.
Great. Great. All right. How about you, John Gardner?
Well, that was early. I thought I'd go about 20 people deep.
No, you're popping up tonight.
So I'm on my phone, so apologies in advance and eventually. Question. We do a lot of snow starts coming a little lower. We try to go up and just kind of sit around or just play off in the snow in the hills, maybe about 20 miles outside of town. It's a nice little hot chocolate fest. I will throw it to Vicky.
Hello, everybody. Vicky Nakashima. I live in East Vancouver. I use she, her pronouns. My answer is, I think we're so lucky to live in a part of the country where we have different seasons. distinct seasons. And Monday I got to go to the Japanese garden. And even though it was raining and cold, it was so beautiful. And it makes you appreciate that each season has something to offer that's different. And there's a purpose for rubber boots. So I'm going to pick CC Ryder.
Thank you. I'm Cece Ritter. I use she, her pronouns. I work at Metro in the DEI department. Let's see, winter tradition. I am thinking about my mom's dessert that she would always make, which are called yum yum bars. And we always have them during the holiday. And she passed a couple of years ago. And so it's really important for us to have those every year. So we've already had them once and we got to have them a couple more times. Let's see. Fabiola, you're below me in my screen.
Thank you, Cece. Thanks, everyone. Let's see, Fabiola Casas. I use they and she pronouns on the IBR equity team. And I don't have a lot of family traditions, and this one I'm gonna go outside the parameters of it. This one's technically fall because it's early December, but a friend of mine has been gathering a group of us up just heading up to Mount Hood in Welch's, and we just got to do that recently, and it's just been a really sweet the last few years, a really sweet time to connect with folks that are just wonderful that we don't have a lot of time during the year to connect, and it's around a couple birthdays. So I've been loving that lately, and that's been giving me a lot of energy today. So thanks for the question. Let's see here. I will pass it to Chandra.
Hello, everybody. Chandra Washington, DEI Org Development from CTRAN. I use she, her pronouns. And the thing that I think is, I guess, the most important that I would say for my family is just going Christmas light viewing, just getting in the car and driving around. So it's fun to do, and it's fun for all ages. So that's always a plus. Not sure who hasn't gone yet, so I'm going to ask for a little help from Dr. Hunt here.
Aiden.
All right, good evening, everyone. Aiden Groenauer, they, he pronouns. Work on the IBR program, Civil Rights and Equity. Well, Chandra, that's the best one that we do as well, except we like to kind of walk around different neighborhoods, check out all the lights. Me and my family are a huge fan of lights, so wherever they are, just pick different locations each time of year, and just enjoy a brisk walk, checking out everybody's decorations. So that's really fun for us. I will pass it to my friend Nikki Chen.
Thank you, Aiden. Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Chen. I am the business partner for the Office of Equity and Inclusion at the City of Vancouver. I go by she, her pronouns. And for the holidays, I actually appreciate those in December, but I look forward to the Lunar New Year with my in-laws. They make a really big deal and go all out. My mother-in-law is part of a lot of the organizations in her community, so that's always fun to me. I will pass it over to Lucy. Did you already go?
I did not, thank you. So my name is Lucy Hamer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with the equity team. And I guess my top one is hot chocolate and really cheesy holiday movies, usually involving a prince in a country that ends in avia. You know the kind. And I will pass to June.
Hey everyone, June Reyes, she, her pronouns. I'm with the Port of Portland as a Community Impact Program Manager. I guess something that I look forward to in the holidays is just being around all the cousins and all the cousins, and just really just being immersed in family for hours, because that's the only time I really see them. And I'll probably be on camera because I'm eating, but very present.
That's great. How about Soko?
Looks like I'm having computer issues, but I'm Soko Iat, name is pronoun. I'm with the equity committee. I think one thing that I'm looking forward to in this uh wintertime holiday is actually planning for the holidays I enjoy to celebrate, which is our Cambodian New Year in April. So usually around this time, it's when folks start getting the years uh, going to planning for those. But otherwise, and just enjoying nice cool breeze of walking and seeing the weather around us. And then anticipating the weather changing as we get past this big hump in the winter.
Great. How about Greg? Oh, Greg, I can't hear you.
Good evening, everyone. Greg Johnson, IBR Program Administrator. Winter tradition, New Year's Eve, watching the Twilight Zone marathon. So that is it. And watching movies with family over the holidays.
That's great. All right. Janelle.
Good afternoon, everyone. John L. Bell, he, him, Principal Equity Officer for IBR. I was really struggling to identify something that I like about winter because I do not like being cold. So I think my favorite pastime is typically leaving sometime in the winter to go someplace warm. But I think if I were to be pressed for an activity, it probably is making a sweet potato pie.
Delicious. All right. Megan.
Hello.
Hey.
I will say our tradition of cutting down a tree. This year we could not find a good one from my perspective. And my husband this year, even though he doesn't love doing it, stayed committed and he's like, we won't settle. We'll go find one that works for you. And he made us stay longer, even though it's his least favorite tradition.
Awesome. All right. Emily.
Hi, everybody. Emily Thomas Peralta, she, her, AO pronouns. I'm with the IBR Equity Team and the Community Benefits Lead. And favorite holiday traditions. I'm with Greg. I love New Year's Eve. It's my favorite holiday. But then I also very much like baking, and I watch like the holiday baking competition shows and work on my skills. And I just made a lemon pie the other day for a friend, and like some whipped cream from scratch. And it was very new for me, but it turned out well. So that was exciting.
Fabulous. All right. All right. Let's move into our segment on tolling.
I think first we have a program update from Greg, but I am ready as soon as he's done.
Okay. Program update.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So the program has been tremendously busy. We wrapped up our 60-day public comment period for the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. So we have received over 3,400 submissions, and each submission may have more than one comment. So we have a minimum of 3,400 comments, which our team is in the process of categorizing, and we will be putting out sometime in early 2025 a summary of what we have heard. All of the answers to questions and comments will appear in the final supplemental environmental impact statement, and that will happen once again towards late summer, early fall of 2025. So each and every one will receive a reply. But we are continuing to do presentations and keep folks up to date on the program. We are still meeting with neighborhood associations, and a lot of their concerns as we get closer to construction, their concerns are around real estate and property takes. So we are meeting with folks and explaining what that process is. We met with the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium in around the Portland area. Concrete Reinforcing Steel Institute, they're interested in what type of pavement we're going to be putting down, and Leadership Clark County. So we will continue to do presentations. Just because the draft supplemental is done, we know we still have folks with questions out there, so we'll continue to do those things. So the Bi-State Tolling Subcommittee, you're going to hear from Megan Hodges next up to tell you what things are going on with tolling. But we also have a Bi-State Legislative Committee meeting tomorrow starting at 3 p.m. So if you have the time and the inclination, please listen in, and hopefully we will have a great informational meeting for our legislative folks in both states. But other than that, the team is just still working hard on getting ready to enter into the final supplemental environmental impact statement process. And that is a process that we anticipate will take 9 to 10 months, which will culminate in the final document, the FSEIS, and then about a month later, a record of decision. So we're working with our federal partners on a schedule, but what that record of decision means is that we are going into construction. So towards the end of next year, maybe around this time, we're looking to have a shovel in the ground on this project that will get all of the hard work you folks have done. You will start to see some of the results of that hard work. So with that, I will be quiet and I'll take any questions that the team may have.
Right. Maybe should we take down the slides for a moment and see if any hands raise?
If I'm seeing
All right.
none from my vantage point, so thanks everyone, and I'll be listening in on the meeting. And if questions do come up later, I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the tolling update with Megan.
Hi, everyone. I am back again. I've been here a couple times now to provide an update on the tolling and the bi-state rate setting process that's in the early stages that has been happening over the past few months. So I think somebody in the community advisory group meeting said these slides ended up not being very easily understandable, but once I talked through it, they understood a lot more. So I'm hoping the same will be true today. So I will just start going, and you can feel free to answer questions or wait till the end if that's better. Go ahead. So I'm going to start with a reminder about why we are tolling and what tolling helps us accomplish. So as we've shared before, the program has multiple funding sources. We have federal grants that we have either received or are in process that make up the left half of that pie chart. And then we have the state funding commitments that have come from both Oregon and Washington that are the upper right part of the pie chart. And then tolling makes up a relatively small piece of the overall pie, but is also one of those pieces that the folks that travel on the bridge may feel more than some of those other commitments. So the goal of tolling is to both fund the 1.24 billion of the construction costs. So we would get a loan and then pay it back with those tolls. It also helps keep the bridge well maintained and operating well during the time period that we are paying back that loan. And then it also can help with improved traffic moving through the area, meaning because of how tolling results in some folks changing how they travel or when they travel, it also helps improve reliability on the corridor. So this is our cost estimate right now, the 5 to 7.5 billion. And right now we're targeting 1.24 billion from toll funding as one piece of the overall finance plan. Next slide. So now I'm going to get into this is the level 3 traffic and revenue analysis. So that is the technical term for a report that we are analysis and report that we're required to do in order to set toll rates on a facility. And I'll go into more detail about what that purpose is. So next slide. So I'm going to recap the work that the Bi-State Tolling Subcommittee, so that's the subcommittee of Oregon and Washington members that was set up to make recommendations related to toll policies and rates. I'm going to give you a reminder of the feedback that you provided staff from the transportation commissions in your June meeting, and also let you know how that feedback informed the recommendations that they developed. And then I'm going to share more information about which toll rates and discounts and exemptions are moving forward into the next phase of analysis, which is that level 3 traffic and revenue study. Next slide. Okay, so this is kind of an overall schedule of the work that Bi-State Toll Subcommittee did over the last few months. So I think our slides got off. This is one of my, this is the forward-looking piece. I'm gonna see, are we using the updated set of slides? I can probably, this one I need to get to at the end. So can we see what the next one is? Yep. It won't make sense if I cover this one now. Okay, so let's go, we'll start here. So just a reminder that the Bi-State Tolling Subcommittee was formed with 2 members of the Oregon Transportation Commission and 2 members of the Washington Transportation Commission. And they have been meeting monthly since about January, with a few months off throughout that time. That subcommittee was set up because the full transportation commissions are the one with the statutory authority or the authority in law to set toll rates on a facility. And setting of those toll rates also includes discounts and exemptions. So they were charged with developing recommendations to bring back to the full commissions for decision-making. And one of the pieces that they would say is most key about what they were charged with is making sure that those toll rates both comply with state law and applicable bond covenants meets the requirements of the loan that we are provided to fund construction. So those requirements would essentially, there would be a lot of them, but one of the key ones is to make sure that we can use tolling to pay back the loan that is provided for construction. So it would be used to pay back the 1.24 billion. Next slide. I'll just clarify too. So back in June is when staff from the transportation commissions came to talk to the equity advisory group. I don't work for either of the commissions. I am on the IBR program, but I am kind of a support staff person that tracks all of the work that they're doing and then makes sure that if something is going to the program to do, that I'm coordinating with other folks on the program to make sure that it gets done. And I also make sure that they get relevant program updates that is necessary to inform their work. So they had staff from the transportation commissions had conflicts that made it so they couldn't be here today. So I've been tracking it throughout the process, but I am not staff to the commission who are the ones kind of doing the work and are charged with setting rates and policies. So as that subcommittee started their work, they came together and said that we will have to meet the requirements to fund the bridge, but what else do we want to account for in approaching this work? So they developed these toll rate and policy considerations that are things that they are keeping in mind or considering as they approach toll rate setting. So that includes safe and efficient mobility, improving the corridor and efficient operations, minimizing effects on vulnerable populations and overburdened communities, environmental quality, so contributing to the reduction of air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, and then economic vitality. Next slide. So I did include both the community advisory group feedback and the feedback that came from this group, so I'll cover both of those quickly. So in June, staff from the commissions came to both of our program advisory groups to get some feedback, and they had you do a Mentimeter survey. So screenshots from the community advisory group feedback are included on the right-hand side. And then there's some bullets at the bottom that include the takeaways. So the community advisory group said that they will consider other ways to travel once a toll is implemented, which is something that would be expected once a toll is put on a facility, but they weren't quite aligned with how they would modify their trip. So it kind of ran across the board. They did say that of the options on the previous slide, the one that was most important to them was safe and efficient mobility. One other thing that was asked was about pre-completion toll rates. And I think both groups, you guys did, as well as them, had similar feedback on that pre-completion tolling is what the program plans to do. So that is to implement a toll on the facility once construction starts, but before the new bridge is complete. And the feedback that was provided by both groups was to say that they and you would rather see a similar toll rate during construction as well as when construction is finished, instead of having a lower rate during construction and then a higher rate once the bridge is complete. And I'll speak more to that when we get later in the presentation, because that's one of the pieces that moved forward into what is being analyzed. And so, like I said, CAG thought that a lot of them said that it would cause them to change how they travel. And then several people identified that they would use I-205 to avoid paying a toll, or they would travel during a different time of day. Next slide. So the feedback that we heard from this group is included here. So of those options that were on the other considerations in toll rate setting, we heard from you folks that equity was the policy consideration that was most important, followed by safe and efficient mobility. And then, as I mentioned, you folks also felt that a pre-completion toll rate should be similar to the toll rate that is implemented when a bridge opens. And I will say that the transportation commissions and their staff were surprised by that. So that is feedback that they did not anticipate coming from the groups. And it did inform what rates moved forward for analysis. And you folks also agreed that it would cause you to rethink your mode of travel, and that you would travel during a different time of day. I think there was no clear winner in terms of how you may divert when or what other choice you might make to avoid the toll. But the options put on the table, or the feedback said that you may take transit, carpool, or divert to 205. And then questions about a low-income program came up from this group, and I will speak more to that in the future slides as well. Next slide. So this is a slide that it's just a standard slide we use that has a lot of information, but I'll try to distill the key points so you don't have to read everything on here. So the work that subcommittee was doing was identifying scenarios to move into the last step that's on this slide, the level 3 investment grade toll traffic and revenue analysis. So that is required in order for the states to get a loan against to fund the construction amount that we need and have tolling as a payback element. So we would not be able to qualify for a loan if we didn't have a level 3 investment grade analysis completed. That is also required for the transportation commissions to set toll rates. They need to have that level of analysis complete in order to identify a toll rate that will get the amount of funding back that is necessary. So that's the last step in a multi-step process. The first one is work that is kind of the sketch level, where they look at a very wide range of possible ways to toll, or possible ways to use rates, and possible times of day. So it's very, very broad and less specific. And that work was actually completed during the Columbia River Crossing project a while ago. And it got progressively more detailed during that project. But when we started this effort, we knew that we didn't need to start at the sketch level, because we already had a lot of information from, including a level 3 investment grade analysis from the first, from CRC. So this time we started with the level 2 traffic and revenue analysis. And that's something that was completed last year. And that looked at, I think we ended up with 11 different toll rate options and scenarios that were analyzed during kind of the middle level of analysis. So we went from 11 and now we're narrowing it into 4 that are moving forward. So that analysis was quite broad still, but not as broad as the level 1, but it really informed what could get the 1.24 billion and what couldn't, and allowed some options to be taken off the table. So next slide. So here we have the work that has occurred to date that the Bi-State Toll Subcommittee did. So they reviewed the results from that middle level analysis that was completed. They considered preliminary toll rate scenarios that I think we had one 4-hour meeting where they were discussed at length in a public meeting. And then in July of this year, they landed on those 4 scenarios to recommend to the full transportation commissions. So in October, the full transportation commissions, the full Oregon Commission and full Washington Commission met jointly, and they approved the recommended toll scenarios. And I'll show you what those are in that October meeting. And then as part of that meeting, the full commissions also directed the subcommittee to look at to identify an approach to analyzing a discount or exemption for tribal members of sovereign tribal nations. Next slide, and I'll get more into that also. So I've kind of sprinkled this throughout, but why is a level 3 traffic and revenue study needed? So this level of analysis helps inform rate setting, as I said. It shows whether it's possible to get the 1.24 billion in construction funding that is needed. It helps understand what behaviors vehicles will do once a toll is implemented. So it helps identify how many people will decide to stay home, or whether they will take 205, or whether they will travel during a different time of day, or whether they will travel on a different mode. So it helps understand if you put too high of a toll rate, if too many people don't travel, or if it kind of further limits traffic to a point that we can't get the 1.24 billion. And then, as I said, it helps get a credit rating to secure financing. Next slide. So this is a very busy slide, and we just wanted to make sure that you were kind of fully aware of what was being studied, but you don't necessarily have to memorize it. So I will walk through it. So you can see the first column shows the range of rates that will be analyzed to be applied once construction starts on the existing bridge. So that's the pre-completion timeframe. And then the second column shows what the proposed rates would be during post-completion, so once a new bridge is open. So you can see in here that they did end up moving forward with a scenario that keeps those numbers the same during pre-completion and during post-completion, so consistent with the feedback of folks want the toll rate to be the same, and they were not interested in having a lower rate during pre-completion and higher rate during post-completion. That's not applied across the board though, so that there were still different options to consider. The third column addresses whether the rates would be different on a weekend versus on a weekday. And then the fourth column shows the rate for trucks. So typically on tolled facilities, they will charge, since a truck takes up more space and puts more wear and tear on the facility, they look at charging between 1.5 and 3 times, or 2 times and 4 times the standard vehicle rate for trucks. And the 1.5 is for medium trucks, the 3 is for large trucks, or the 2 is for medium trucks and 4 is for large trucks. The next column, so second from the end, shows a rate of escalation that would be applied annually. So that's just like you get a cost of living increase annually. This would be, I guess, the opposite of that, an annual increase in the toll rate at a certain percentage to keep pace with inflation. And then the very last column shows at the low income toll program discount that was looked at. So all 4 of these scenarios assume that a low-income toll program would be implemented. The difference between them is at what point that would be implemented. So because Washington will be managing the equipment and the customer service for tolling, and there is no low-income toll program that exists within the state currently, they have to put a lot of infrastructure in place in order to flip the switch that allows a low-income discount to be applied. It's not currently part of their regular operations. So there is some time that it may take to implement that, and the timeline is still being assessed, so we don't have anything specific other than to know it is looking at whether it would be implemented on day 1 as soon as tolling, well, sorry, whether it would be implemented when the new bridge opens, so when construction is complete, or as soon as practical, which is as soon as possible based on when the toll program, or based on when a low-income program could be up and running, even though it's new. So those are the 2 options, and each of them, so the first 2 identify not applying that toll, or sorry, not having a low-income discount until the new bridge opens. The next 2 is as soon as is practical, and that could still be during construction. One thing that's not really clearly detailed in here is all 4 of the scenarios assume a variable rate toll, and that's why there's a range on here. So the variable rate toll means that it would be a lower rate during off-peak time. So the middle of the afternoon probably would be that, like, 1 o'clock in the afternoon would be that $1.55 rate, but the peak time period would be either the 3:20 or 3:65, and that would be like in the middle of rush hour traffic at 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm going to pause on this slide and ask if there are questions, because this slide has a lot of information on it.
I see Nikki's hands up. Go ahead, Nikki.
Thank you. I think you hinted at it. So thank you so much for this wonderful breakdown. That was very helpful. So you stated that Washington will implement customer service side, and that's the reason why the as soon as practical is an option, because we're not sure about how soon they can get that up and running. Or is that, and I'm just trying to clarify that part. Or is it that option 3 and 4 is what we actually want, if that can happen? I just wanted to understand the difference between, is it an actual option or
not? Okay, so let me reframe how I said it maybe. I think the reason why, as last year, there was a plan in place for Oregon to be the administrator of tolls. So the one that would have a customer service, would do the customer service and own the equipment. So at that point, they were planning to implement a low-income toll program the day that tolling started, because they had more time to kind of build it into their program from the ground up. So when that shifted, it became no longer an option for for IBR to have that as a day one option, or I guess I should say, we don't know for sure if it will be an option on day one until Washington has more time to assess the timeline in which they could implement it. But what I will say is tolling isn't supposed to be, or tolling construction for the IBR program is not starting yet, so there is still time. I think the goal would be have it turned on as soon as possible, and that may not be on day one, but there would still be a desire to get it implemented as soon as possible, based on what is possible within their business operations. So
that thank you. That was the yes, that was what I was missing. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I can't do the hand thing. Quick question. How do these proposed rates, I guess, relate to other established programs around the country?
Meaning, how do they compare? Like, is this high for a facility or low for a facility?
Exactly.
I guess what I would say, so a lot of people ask how IBR compares to other mega projects, and we usually say you can never compare IBR to other mega projects because we are by state, and each tolls are tolls are implemented to fund different things and fund different pieces of a project. So I would hesitate to compare because other facilities may not have variable rate tolls. It may be static and on all the time, or like have the same rate during the entire time of day. What I was gonna do is really quick look up. And in Washington, we have other facilities that have a toll rate, but again, they funded different projects, so it's kind of hard to compare without knowing kind of that background information behind what you are comparing. But one other bridge across the water that has a toll right now, but I can't tell you what that background information is on behind what it funded or like what percentage of the overall program. But on the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, which is another, it's a WashDOT owned bridge that goes between Tacoma and Gig Harbor. Their toll rate is $5.50, but that's one way. So, but you only pay the toll one way. It is not, you don't pay it when you go there and come back. You pay once for both directions. So what I would say is it's not inconsistent, but it depends what time of day you're looking at also. Other questions? And I do have more to cover, including like what steps are ahead for this work.
Let's move and we'll come back.
So this is the other piece that I mentioned on one of the previous slides in the October full commission meeting. When they approved analysis of those 4 scenarios, they also approved the toll subcommittee going to look at options for analyzing a discount or a discount and exemption for tribes. So they did that in their November meeting, and that's kind of the newest information since we last provided an update at this meeting. So the tribes have expressed an interest in having an exemption in the coordination that has occurred. So sorry, taking a step back, the Bi-State Toll Subcommittee is participating in formal government to government consultation with some tribes, and they offered that consultation to a number of tribes. So they're coordinating with a number and then also doing government to government consultation. So in that coordination and consultation, there have been requests for a tribal discount or exemption. So at the October meeting, the full commissions directed the subcommittee to go look at it. And in that meeting, they looked at the Bi-State Toll Subcommittee, moved forward analyzing 2 options. Two options with variation between them. So they looked at options that give a discount both a discount and an exemption. And the discount that they're looking at is a 50% discount. And then they also looked at different options for how many tribes it would apply to. So, and two different options for how many tribes it would apply to. So basically what will happen is we will get the analysis back on the level 3 traffic and revenue analysis scenarios that were on that previous slide. And then they will take those and do an analysis for how many tribal vehicles and members of a tribe may participate in an exemption or discount to understand what the impact would be to revenues and also understand how many folks may use it. And then that will help with future decision-making as it relates to a discount or exemption for tribal members. So next slide. So this is the upcoming rate setting process. So, and this is the, and when do I get to weigh in part also. So while each commission has separate authority essentially to set rates, the goal that the commission staff has been working toward is making sure that both full commissions are in the same room at the same time as they set rates, and taking that action together so that when the public wants to call in or weigh in or watch what's happening, they don't have to call into 2 separate meetings at 2 separate times. They get access to that information at the same time, and they can provide their public comment at the same time. So since the transportation commissions have the authority to set those rates, they are also the ones that will conduct the community engagement around that rate setting process. So what will happen is all 4 of those scenarios that were on that previous slide, once they go through analysis and we have information out from that, then that is the point where the public will weigh in on options that are moving forward. Because it will be a little bit different than what has been done previously, this is kind of the level of detail we have right now while the commissions determine what that looks like. As I mentioned though, tribal consultation will continue to be led by the Bi-State Tolling Subcommittee, and then the program team is coordinating closely throughout that process, and both in terms of community engagement as well as the rate setting process to make sure that we're providing you folks with regular updates from that work. And I know Greg usually includes some little report out during his program updates portion at the beginning also. So we'll keep providing those updates, and then we will make sure that advisory groups and folks that are engaged with the IBR program are aware when the community engagement timeframe happens. Next slide. And then in terms of meetings for 2025, the commissions are still coordinating when those meetings would happen, but the pages linked down below are where those meeting dates will be published, and that's where all of their 2024 meetings are right now. If anybody wants to go back and watch the videos, if you got extra time on your hands. And then as the process moves forward, if you want to make sure that you're receiving updates on their work, you can send an email to that email address right there, and they can get you signed up for the mailing list. And then I apparently haven't reviewed my own slides in a number of days because I think my very first slide was indeed in the right spot, and I thought it was one of these end slides. Can we go back to my first slide really quick and I'll cover it now? So the other steps that are kind of looking ahead. So the analysis that I talked about throughout my presentation, the program is in the middle of conducting that, and it's anticipated to be done in the spring of 2025. And then the community engagement timeframe that I mentioned would happen in the late spring of 2025 for public input, and then public input on those toll scenarios. And then public engagement, as it says, is now through summer of 2025 because each of the meetings that subcommittee holds are public, and they accept public comments ahead of that and during that meeting. And then that tribal consultation is continuing, that the Bi-State Toll Subcommittee is leading, continues kind of on an as-needed basis and when there are updates to provide. And then toll rates and policies would be adopted later in 2025 after that public input timeframe. And of course, the caveat that we always provide, this is the schedule as of now, and updates will be made kind of as this is backed up to the overall program schedule, and tolling doesn't begin until construction begins. So this aligns with our current program schedule. But if our program schedule changes, then it impacts this schedule as well. So, and now that's it. You can open it up for more questions. There are.
So Megan, from the EAG, what if people don't have necessarily like questions, could you ask the group a question? Or what, like the kind of feedback that would be helpful and useful right now?
Let me think about that. So or Vicky, you have a question, and I can see if I can do what Dr. Hunt suggested also.
Okay. So there's quite a bit of news reporting about ODOT's deficit, budget deficit right now. And it sounds serious, but I think a lot of the public fear that a toll may escalate, not because of the bridge or the need, but because of other circumstances that affect the budget. And is there anything that by statute or in the implementation of the tolls that there could be assurance or protection that the tolls would be dedicated to the bridge and not to other issues? I don't know.
And I would respond with yes, kind of. So in Washington law, there is a statute that says toll revenue collected on a facility must be reinvested on the facility that it is collected, which helps on the Washington side. In Oregon, I know that the Oregon Transportation Commission has committed to saying that tolls collected in Oregon would go back to the facility where they're connected or collected. So that's not the same as statute though. And then probably the most helpful piece is federal approval for us to toll comes from a specific section in federal law that says if you are rehabilitating or replacing a bridge, then you are able to use tolling to fund that. So that does not address the what happens in perpetuity, but for us to implement that initial toll under federal law, it can only be to fund the bridge.
Because that should be part of an important part of the talking points, because there seems to be a lot of misinformation right now about, you see everything from things written on Nextdoor to, some of the signs that said no tolls during the election that create, concern. And sometimes we don't know how to answer that.
And that's very helpful to hear. I had not connected that. I'm so focused on we need tolling for this specific thing that I work on every day that I hadn't thought about how it may reflect kind of the bigger picture within the agencies. I do know, I think the budget concerns that ODOT has right now, that's probably one of the reasons why they were attempting to implement tolls is because it is a reliable funding stream and the toll is paid by those who directly use the facility. And so, which is why it's important for the toll funding to go back into that facility so that you're reinvesting for the folks that are using that facility.
And the legislative session is in January.
Yep.
And so it would be 2 years before I think you could pass that kind of thing again.
I think, was that a question, Vicky, or?
Well, I mean, if something's going to be done, timing is probably critical. And if you miss this session, I'm in Oregon anyway, it will be a while before, but that is more of an insurance if there's a statute, just to convince the public that it isn't going to escalate because ODOT has a deficit because of the gas tax or whatever the reason is.
And I think we can look into, I know that over the years since tolling in Oregon was first put into legislation, there have been modifications to that legislation. I'm not sure. I know in the upcoming session, they're given the deficit that ODOT has, there will be a conversation about funding transportation and how to do that. So I guess I can't speak to whether or not there are other plans around any tolling related legislation that may happen this session. So maybe I think we can look into what does exist in law though in Oregon, and if anything has changed over the last few years to kind of provide that assurance. And if we find anything, we'll get back to you. If we don't, then assume that what I said is kind of as good as it gets right now.
And it could be an opportunity to include some kind of mention about equity issues around pricing, that even if it's not making it firm, that at least it's a consideration that's substantiated by.
Yeah, and at least for that, the Oregon legislature and the Oregon Transportation Commission have laid out their feelings about what should be, what toll rates, or that a low income toll program should be implemented. But in Oregon, they're not the only decision maker, and so if one state does it but the other state doesn't, then you can't. In Oregon law, you can't tell the Washington Transportation Commission what to implement. So it still needs to be aligned between the two states. And it's been it has come up as a suggestion in Washington state, just hasn't moved forward to the point of being in legislation or in policy. But I will say that the transportation commissioners who are the decision makers, more than one of them has said they will not set a toll rate if it does not include a low income toll program. And as the direct decision makers about toll rates, you could argue that that's maybe more helpful than the legislature doing it, or helpful in a different way, since they're the decision makers around toll rates.
One question I had, Megan, was you said that some tolling you pay once, and that really covers it covers you whether you go forward and back or just go one way. And is the assessment, like, we will be determining whether we could do something like that? We haven't said we're going to do something like that.
So that is not being looked at for the I-5 bridge. That is what is implemented on the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And I think the reason they did it there is there's actually only one way in and out, or I guess maybe there's that bridge and a ferry. Whereas for the I-5 bridge, not all traffic that crosses it is going there and back. Right? If it's through traffic going all along I-5, then at what point is somebody coming back or not? So I think it may not go over well to charge a 2-direction toll to a vehicle that's not going to end up going 2 directions. So that's not something that's on the table for the I-5 bridge.
Well, I think we may be at a good transition point. Thank you. And of course, Megan, you can send comments or thoughts or questions to Megan as they come to you. And we will see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, Emily, please talk to us about community benefits.
Great, happy to. Thank you for welcoming me back into this space. I'm here to share our next batch of recommendations, as we call them, tranches. And so this is tranche 3 that we'll go through. And so the CBAG has their meeting later this week, and they'll be finishing their refinement on this particular batch, and then moving through their decision-making process to move them forward as recommendations. So the input that we get from you all today, we are going to reflect that in that refinement conversation with CBAG. So next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to read these out just so that folks can hear it, process it, and I recognize it's quite a bit to hear all at once. So if you all need to kind of sit with it a bit, we can also take feedback after the meeting. So our first kind of subcategory in tranche 3 is based on some feedback we got from the group, where they really felt a few of them kind of fit within this theme of over river trail accessibility and connectivity. And so what we have here is explore creative solutions to ensure accessibility and the connections from the multimodal trail to transit stations, at the elevated station, and on Hayden Island, including an elevator, ramp, and stairs. Elevators should be designed to accommodate multimodal transit options, such as bikes, scooters, etc. And I just want to point out here, folks wanted to make sure we were very intentional about calling out the elevated station in particular, as we know that that's really on a lot of folks' minds. All right, next we have enhanced multimodal connectivity to trails, including but not limited to the 40-mile loop, Vancouver waterfront, and the North Marine Drive interchange, making them intuitive to traverse for all users. Next, enhance safety for multimodal users crossing the bridge by incorporating protective features into the design with special considerations for medical issues and suicide prevention. Next slide, please. All right, and then continuing with mobility and accessibility, we have the design team to consider integration of acoustic enhancements in designs to better accommodate individuals with visual impairments, ensuring path support. And then provide shelters, water, and bathrooms for different users of the multi-use paths, with a focus on those using paths for both recreation and essential travel. Next slide, please. And then our last few here are under the physical design category. And so we have considered the inclusion of additional connectors such as 4th Lane, 23rd Avenue, and 49th Avenue to ensure all areas are connected. Create a community garden near the waterfront as part of the bridge design to serve as a resource for local residents. And then design team to consider advanced signage on the bridge, including digital displays along the shared use path, displaying relevant information and real-time updates and enhancing a sense of place. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll open this up for a discussion with folks, and what we really want to hear is similar to when we've come the other months before, is are these in line with the EAG equity framework principles from your perspective? And just want a reminder, this language is still going to be worked through with the team, with the CBAG this month. And so there may be some slight shifts in the language, and there is some room for any suggestions or thoughts that folks have there. So with that, I'll open it up. And also, I think before we dive into, Vicki, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to welcome you if you'd like to share any of your thoughts and like perspectives, things that you've heard as you sit on CBAG as an EAG representative.
You did put me on the spot, Emily. I think these discussions, the ability to go back and
A little
look at
bit.
what we've talked about is very helpful, because I think when you see it distilled, it looks a lot different, and it's hard to encompass all the things that are important to the equity, to the Community Benefits Committee in terms of the issues that these recommendations will mean to the future of the bridge. And the accessibility issues, I think, are critical. I mean, everything from, I think there was a discussion at the last community benefits meeting, I can't remember if it was there, about how you get from the ground level to the top where you get on the bridge. I mean, if you're walking, that no matter how you do it, it's going to be challenging for a lot of people with limited mobility. And so I think some of that's unresolved. But this will be helpful. It's so much easier to look at it when it's a few bullet points instead of pages.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Vicki. And I think that's a really great call out. And just to reinforce with folks here is that, as you mentioned, accessibility and like really digging into thinking through what's an individual's experience and what is that actually going to look like is something that the CBAG really is paying attention to and thinking through. And there's a lot of really rich discussion in, trying to get into those details and think about if somebody has this particular need, or if a stairs or a long ramp would be challenging, or there's weather conditions, what would that mean? And how can we try to think ahead of that to, really address it? And so I just want to uplift that Vicki's absolutely right. There are really rich discussions, and it's on the forefront of the CBAG's mind. Yeah, Nikki, go ahead. You're on mute, sorry.
I swore I pushed the button. You would think after all these years I would know by now. My team and I went through the slides together today, and we have some feedback in some ways. But overall, we have like a bullet statement of just some of the things that we're seeing that was presented. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how this is going above and beyond versus just something that we should be doing for mobility and accessibility?
Yeah, I can definitely speak a bit to that. And then I'm not sure if Greg, if you're able to speak a little bit about it too. Greg's been very engaged in those conversations and kind of bringing that DOT perspective. But, I know I've had quite a few discussions with our technical teams on the back end to really understand what are some of the pieces that are either standard practices or maybe they're spelled out in the modified LPA, and what are those pieces that maybe go beyond that. And so there are like the basic considerations from what I understand about the ADA requirements, and that the team has expressed that they are not, they're not settling for minimum standards. They are pushing, the kind of the typical practices there and making sure that accessibility really is met. And so some of these other pieces that we're thinking about in terms of, what is like the acoustic materials, that's something that I think is, a little bit outside of maybe what the design team would typically think about, but it's something that is being brought up here, and that, then we deliver that to our design team and they're thinking through, okay, what would that actually mean? And how can we engage and dig a little deeper into what type of materials would that be? And so, we definitely include that analysis with our teams and describe that with the group. I don't have all my technical notes here in front of me with kind of those different pieces, but
you're okay. Can I give a couple examples, and you can just
of course.
I'll use an example of when you're talking about explore creative solutions for strikes with connections for the when it says transit stations at the elevated station, are we referring to the waterfront station? And if we are, can we call it that?
Yeah, and so I think it is that one because we did had a different language there that was like Terminal 1, I think was the language we had previously. But so
Mm-hmm.
CBG members wanted us to explicitly say elevated so
Okay.
that we can make sure we're really indicating to the teams that that is the piece that they're concerned about, is that the special considerations that need to be
Mm-hmm.
made, because it does go a bit into like what are the standard things that are provided at a transit station, and how
Mm-hmm.
would that look different when you're, 70 or however many feet up in the air and in the
Yes.
elements. Mhm.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Could you just go back and ask them if they can add the word waterfront just
Yeah, yeah,
selfishly on the Vancouver side? It would be nice to
of
know that
course,
you're talking about us.
of course. I'm sure Mary Ann would appreciate that as well.
Um, and then we had another question where they're talking about um, enhancing multitude connectivity trails, including but not limited to the 40-mile loop, Vancouver waterfront, and the North Marine Drive interchange, making them intuitive to traverse for all users. What is the actual like benefit? I think that was a little too vague. Like, is there a little more
Mhm.
detail on what that is other than connecting trails? Like, what exactly?
Yeah. And so this is and Vicky, if you have any thoughts you want to share here too, welcome to do that. But I think this is really centered around folks wanting to make sure that we can connect to, the trails that have already been developed or are part of, other jurisdictions kind of plans to fill those out, and making sure that there's connectivity all the way through the program area. And so that's really the main thing that they're trying to achieve here. And so they in the last meeting, they asked us to include some of those specific locations just to ensure that folks were
Okay.
clear that they were wanting to connect those in particular.
Okay. There was one section in regards to the elevators. The elevators should be designed to accommodate
Yes.
multimodal transit options such as bikes, scooters, etc. I'm really not trying to sound sarcastic or rude in any way. How is that an elevated community benefit? Because I would hope that the elevators would accommodate all of these things. I just want to be a little more explicit when we're saying, in full transparency, the reason why is if we're going to tell community that we're doing additional things for them around mobility and accessibility and equity, we want it to sound elevated and not just like what is supposed to be part of the process, right? And so we don't want it to sound like it just feels a little underwhelming of like, okay, so I would hope my bike fits in an elevator. What makes that elevated community support? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. And I think, I can't speak too fully on behalf of DOTs, but from what I understand, I know that elevators tend to be pretty expensive and around the maintenance and all of that, right? And so, from what I understand, that there is some kind of baseline to that where maybe there is some limitation in making sure that it can be large enough to accommodate all those. And really the what folks were wanting to achieve here and making that explicit, which is in recognition that if given the challenge with the height there, the stairs might not work for everybody. A long ramp might not work for everybody. So if, they wanted to bring their bike and they wanted to, they're riding on the trail and they want to be able to connect to the high capacity transit, they want to make sure that it can fit along with everyone else, but also in recognition that folks may have mobility scooters and other things. So just being explicit that it can be large enough to accommodate and be thoughtful of those different modes that you honestly you would think yes, but maybe it might not be able to assume they would always be accommodated.
If it's going to be shared with the public, can it be verbalized that way? Like versus your standard elevator, this would be something to accommodate more. Does that make sense? Like, so that way it just doesn't sound like there's an elevator that can fit a bike. It's like, well, yeah, I would hope so, but the verbiage makes it sound a little just, if that's
and one thing I think that could be helpful to call out here too is that ultimately our final product that will be the result of all this work will be what we're calling community benefits plan. And so as part of that, we'll have information that'll include, the process, kind of our framework for this, all the recommendations, some of the tracking details and like responsible parties. But then also important, there will be a narrative piece too. And so I
There
think
we
some
go.
of those pieces that you're
Yes.
talking about right there will be
Yes.
part of what we're describing in that narrative piece. That's hard to capture everything in the language, but but
Yes.
we still want to make sure we're expressing that. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you. That was very, very helpful. That's what I needed to know. I appreciate that.
And you can go ahead and also, if you have anything else that comes to mind between now and our sessions on Thursday, and you want to send that by email to either Fabiola or to myself, we are
Yes.
more than happy to receive that.
I might actually go ahead and do that so that way I can be respectful of today's time. Thank you. I appreciate
Of
that.
course, we're always happy to. So this is really great. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Soka?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So, well, first off, just appreciate all the work that you and folks that put their time and thought into this. It's clear that it's taken a lot of effort to get to this point of the review, and I hope that we all can get to a point where the review of this and the other points are really taken to heart and implemented in the bridge. I appreciate the call outs in our discussion right now on the multimodal parts and aspects of connecting the different trails and paths that would connect the bridge. My question is really, what does it mean in some parts of the sections around advanced signage? Or what does that look like? And, there's a specific call out to digital displays. Are these for the motorized vehicles or are these for the non-motorized parts?
That's a great question. And I think that's a great example of one that the committee needs to do a bit more work, in this next session and really kind of digging into what would that mean? What would that maintenance take? Those kind of pieces and digging into the details. But from what I understand, folks were talking about it for the multimodal piece. From what I understand, it would be as folks kind of are starting to cross on either side of the bridge, there's this signage that could, give kind of real updates and different important information that might be helpful to folks. So it would be targeted more for the multimodal path users rather than the vehicular traffic.
All right, so do we have any more questions at this point, or is it a good time for a transition?
I will email everything else.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Nikki,
Thank you, Nikki.
we are a little bit ahead of schedule. If did you want to ask any more right now, or is email?
I don't know if we're there yet. Are we ready to the physical design? Did we get there yet?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Vicky, did you want to?
Sorry. Yeah, a thought came to mind this evening, and the transport for disabled people that's operated by C-Tran and TriMet, I forget what it's called, where it's an on-demand, they come to your house and take you to the doctor or and I think it's funded, it's funded as part of C-Tran service. One of the places a lot of people want to go cross the river, like OHSU, would be the research medical center where a lot of specialized care is offered, or Kaiser hospitals. The clinics are over here, but the major research programs are over on the other side of the river. So that creates because they cannot take their clients across the river. And so either they would have to jump on the train or the bus to get over there. And so I don't know if that's a consideration in planning, is how to make that connection easier for people that have limited access to transportation and rely on C-Trans bus for people with disabilities.
I'm not sure about that video. I think that could be a good one. If we will be after we finish our recommendations for this tranche 3, we'll be digging into tranche 4 starting in January, and then we'll have a good few months for us to dig into those. And I think that would be, I will definitely take note of it now just so that I don't forget that we talked about it. But I think that would be a great one for us to bring up when we're digging into tranche 4.
Yeah,
that's a really great question, and it's something that would be good to know if there is a gap there, and if that needs to be addressed.
thanks.
All right, I'm happy to get the slides pulled up again. Nikki, if we have time after our next conversation, you're welcome to. I'm just offering it so that we don't have to do email follow-up, so we make use of the time, but no pressure at all. Appreciate the thoughtfulness and all the preparation that you've done on your questions. So either way is good.
Yes, we love it.
All right. Well, I will pull up the slides. Does that sound good, Dr. Hunt? Perfect.
Yes, go for it.
All right, great. And we are going to, we only have one slide to kind of help us recap all of the work that we've done to develop these equity performance measures. I did a much longer presentation last month, and we had a really rich conversation around how the performance measures have evolved. And so I want to start by kind of highlighting all of the work that's gone into them now, and then I will pull the slides down and share with you some key points of what we heard, provide some additional insights from conversations we've been able to have internally, and open it up for discussion, and would love to end with having kind of final confirmation of these performance measures recommendations that you all have developed. So to kind of start from the beginning, there was an initial brainstorm with this group. There was some peer research, including considerations of what is being measured on the I-5 Rose Quarter project. There were 2 rounds of EAG refinement, so coming back to the group and doing some additional workshopping. Over this last summer, the performance measures were submitted to IBR leadership. Internally, we did consideration of what was submitted. We did some workshopping to add to what was and make some adjustments to what was recommended initially. We came back last month for further discussion, and I just want to make sure that we are kind of closing the loop on questions and the comments that were shared. And so coming back today to confirm where we ended up. And again, I just want to highlight all of the wonderful work that has gone into and thoughtfulness that has gone into these measures. I just recognize that it's impossible to get to a perfect kind of end product, and our priority is to be able to get to a place where we can take the recommendations and really continue to dig in to how they will be operationalized, how they will be reflected back and reported to community. So that's our goal for today. Last month, we had a really rich discussion. A lot of the conversation, which I appreciated, were members sharing an idea and then hearing other folks kind of confirming, yes, I was thinking the same thing. I had the same question. So as I was going through the notes, I paid special attention to those buckets of input that were collected. And I really felt strongly that we needed to go back internally to have a conversation and then come back to you today. So in summary, there's 4 main points that I heard. And so the first one was that there were some inconsistencies in the timeline for measurement. In particular, there were some inconsistencies in the bucket of mobility and accessibility. And so what we did is we updated to make it consistent. We would be tracking data both in the planning and design phase, as well as coming back to post-construction to see, okay, these measures were or these data points were considered during the planning and design. How did we do? And so it's kind of coming back and making sure that we do that with all of the measures under mobility and accessibility. That was the first main point that was considered. I'm going to pause after each one because there's only 4. I just want to hear if that resonates with folks or if there are any additional comments. That sounds good. All right. Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Thank you. All right. The next thing, we had a really rich conversation around workforce equity and economic opportunity. In the performance measure, we talked about retention. In the previous iteration, we had a measure around retention rates for equity priority communities and women. And we also have a separate measure around percentage of apprentices that journey out. What I heard from folks when we were talking is that we wanted to make sure that we were also understanding what advancement in career was happening, because this is a long effort. It's at least 10 years of work throughout the corridor, and in that time frame, folks were really emphasizing there's a lot of opportunity to have folks not only stay, or not even just at the apprentice level, but to be able to see what are people's kind of advancement throughout the life of the project. And so we added retention and advancement rates for equity priority communities and women to kind of capture that piece of the data and trying to connect the dots for the benefit that folks are getting in the life of the project. So that was a significant and I think intentional change that we made to the performance measures. All right. Those were the main changes. I want to reflect back 2 things that we heard where we did not make changes, but I just want to assure folks that we carefully considered those. The first one was under avoid further harm. There were a few folks that expressed wanting to have displacements or displacement impacts tracked and reported. And as we were thinking about that data, a couple things. It's very, there's so much context that goes into the displacement or property activity that happens, and having that as a data point on a dashboard, for example, we need to provide a lot of context for that. And that information will be publicly available. These are conversations that will continue. Last time, what I shared is that the acknowledgement that transportation infrastructure projects have really caused a lot of damage to communities in the past has been a central part of the narrative in why we really feel like an equity advisory group, that equity considerations are pretty key to what we're trying to do in terms of avoiding further harm, is really, to the best of our ability, keep folks in their places of residence to the best of our ability, not break up communities. And so that has been top of mind, and it will be a conversation that we will be coming back to. But because we're looking at creating some kind of public dashboard or other reporting mechanisms for these objectives, there's too much context missing in that type of a format to be reporting out on that data. So we want to make sure that we're really careful with how we talk about that and how we look at the context around the impact that does occur. So curious if anyone wants to add anything to that piece, because I know that it's really important. Go ahead, Vicki.
Well, when you mentioned retention and then advancement, and then I think there ought to be, in addition, people from diverse backgrounds moving into not only careers in construction, but business ownership. I mean, there should be some relationship there. That they not only advance within, you know, the industry or companies that they work for, but that it may be a avenue to getting into owning your own business.
Yeah, we do have measures around the number of DBEs and small businesses that receive supportive services. We have contract dollars, a number of contracts awarded to businesses owned by people of color. But Vicki, are you specifying that folks that enter, that kind of get connected to the industry through kind of the workforce, like what opportunities do they have potentially to start their own business or kind of become an independent business owner?
Right.
Yeah, I am going to see if Janelle is that my inclination, and I'm gonna go ahead, Janelle.
Yeah, Vicki, I think it's a good point. I think it's probably captured in one of the other measures relative to sort of capturing, you know, what new businesses are grown as a result of this this investment.
Well, I think that if you come into, say, an apprenticeship in electricity or electrical, whatever, and then you're there for a while and maybe become a manager or a supervisor and then decide to open your own business, that probably would be you didn't have as an option when you started with the IBR project. So I think that's a different.
Yeah, I think the challenge with that particular measure is what's the tracking mechanism that would be readily available. Because part of the scrub that we've attempted to do with each of these measures is identify, you know, whether or not there are reliable data sources, so that we can report out. Some of that might be more anecdotal,
right?
But you know, like we can track whether or not someone journey levels out because we have that through certified payroll and other kind of records. It would be more challenging to determine whether or not you know, X person started a firm and just having the reliability of that. But I think that's something for us to bring back and think about, because to your point, Vicki, and we already know this based on, you know, anecdotal data when you talk to DBE firms and others. A good portion of folks who own firms started off in the crafts. And so how, to your point, are we kind of measuring that? I think that's something that can perhaps be thought of. Part of the delicate balance we're wanting to make with these measures is get the blessing of this group to kind of move forward so that we can begin to work with the program to finalize so that we can start to build these into specifications as well as something the program is going to commit to tracking. And so that's part of the goal here, is to get a green light to say, yes, you know, it's not going to be a perfect across the board, but do we have enough of the right measures based on this group's 2-year work on this product to be able to move forward and kind of land the plan on this product.
Thank you. And I'll also just mention, I know that we have folks that are dedicated with DBE kind of expertise that are dedicated to making sure that they're understanding, you know, what opportunities are opened up through the program specific to DBEs. And so through that work, I think those narratives will be kind of coming to the forefront and will be shared out. I do just to, you know, to add to emphasize Jonelle's response here. I think part of what we're trying to do here is make note of those really specific interests, so that as our team continues to collect information, that they know, okay, this is what feels like an important narrative to be connecting. And so Vicki, we're gonna share with the team that is dedicated to building those relationships with DVEs and reporting out kind of things that stand out. I think it's an important point to be making that connection. And I recognize that in the performance measure that says retention and advancement rates for equity priority communities and women, that does also allow for that space to identify where is that advancement happening. What does that look like? And what you're saying, it's part of that narrative, you know? So I think between, with the team kind of having awareness that that is an important piece to be paying attention to, I feel pretty good that that will be, that will come out. Yeah. But
Yeah, and one thing I'll say, Vicki, I think, you know, like any of these measures, it's going to be likely an iterative process. We might agree to these measures and later down the road realize that some perhaps are performing better than others, and likely there might be some that will result in more questions or more things that this body will have questions about, because ultimately, you know, the whole purpose, as we all recall, of these measures is to operationalize the equity framework that this group has created, right? This is the proof in the pudding part. It's like, you know, it's the old saying, don't tell me your priorities, show me your budget, and I will tell you your priorities. This is the accountability side of the equity framework and the equity objectives that this advisory group has created and the program has adopted. And so it will be iterative and will likely change over time, would be my sense.
Right. Awesome. Well, there's one more point that was brought up that had that got lots of agreement from others, and that had to do with the data that's being tracked for specifically air quality. And I think someone had brought up that there may be some gaps in data that is being collected by some of the local agencies. And that is something that similar to kind of the responses to Vicki's comment right now, is really important for us to know, to note. And we really need to rely on the data that is made available by local agencies, because it's kind of outside of the program scope to be developing new systems. And so last month when that point was brought up, we had mentioned, you know, if folks know of ways that folks are collecting data in different neighborhoods, of course, being able to share that with the program is welcomed. And we, you know, we'll continue to collect that input from folks where it's being collected. But in terms of what we can, what we're able to do through our local partnerships, that really will be relying on what's available through the local agencies. So we'll continue to establish those partnerships and flag anything for our partners that that is brought, you know, through continued community dialogue, and as people continue to talk to others in their communities and see what other data sources are becoming available down the line. So that is where we landed. You know, again, we're never going to have a perfect product. That these conversations will continue to build on as we continue to learn more and collect more information and hear more perspectives. And so just really grateful for everything that's gone into the performance measures that we have. And so kind of marking this as our milestone for confirming the recommendations where they are, knowing that we'll continue to be thinking about how to best implement, and we'll be coming back for some touch points in the future.
Maybe just to confirm that, if we could just give maybe thumbs up or the digital thumbs up for folks who are comfortable with that direction moving forward. Okay. Seeing some thumbs up. Great. Thank you.
Great. Dr. Hunt, give me a second. I'll pull the slides back up.
So for EAG public comment through Zoom, please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR EAG meeting webpage. Commentators will be allowed to turn on their webcams, but will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. By phone, dial 253-215-8782, meeting ID 986-0940-5983, passcode 701376. Dial *9 to raise your hand. Dial *6 to unmute yourself. The facilitator will call on participants to provide comment. Please provide your name and affiliation. Commentators will be given 2 minutes to speak. And as you call in, please make sure that you turn down the YouTube on your phone, so on your screen, so that you're not hearing the delay. Next slide. EAG comment instructions. Please see interstatebridge.org/draft SEIS for the ways to submit official public comment on the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. To submit comment after the meeting, fill out the comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting.
Dr. Hunt, I want to chime in here and just note that we missed removing the notice to
for
public.
SEIS.
So just to be really clear that we closed that a few weeks ago, and so the public comment is just for the EAG members.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any people for public comment?
There are no public comments at this time.
All right, so we get to finish early. 3 takeaways from today. So we'll do the meeting evaluation, and 3 takeaways from today.
I'll share a takeaway. I just appreciated Fabiola to share back from the metric conversation that we had. it was a little bit hard to chat, but I did hear the comments that were brought in, and I appreciate you kind of circling back with us on that.
Thank you. Two more. Soko, and then Vicky.
One or second takeaway for the session has been the in-depth presentation on the proposals for the tolling on the bridge. I found it very helpful, and hope others did too.
All right, Vicky and Sandra.
I agree with Soko. That was amazing. I can almost answer questions well, or pretty well, about the tolling. I was really impressed with how all of this work started with sheets and sheets of papers and ideas, and it almost seemed overwhelming. And for Fabiola and Emily and the other staff who worked so hard on this behind the scenes, and to come back with something that's been well distilled but still open for fine tuning has been extraordinarily helpful. So I appreciate your work. It wasn't easy, I know.
Chandra, I saw your hand. Do you want to say anything first, and then
Sure.
Fabiola?
Sure. I appreciate the work that everyone is doing, especially, I mean, kind of to Vicky's point, distilling these ideas into something that's tangible. The bigger thing I think was good to see for the first time, for me at least, is what the tolling rates could be. Because I think that having this idea that it could be, you know, gonna go back to the $5 thing, $5 per trip can be difficult for some people. And when we're talking about equity, we have to recognize that we're all not able to do that. And it may be a key component to how we make money. So it was really nice to see that today. And I really appreciate the work that was related to that.
Fabiola.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone that's been showing up this year. Just as we're all kind of in reflection and wrap up mode for the year. Just, you know, you all continuing to show up each month, and the questions that you ask, which are just so wonderful, and the comments, the discussion has just been very much appreciated. I hope that everyone gets some rest in these last few weeks of the year, hopefully doing something fun with family, and looking forward to, we've been having some really great conversations about what next year could look like. So we look forward to being in contact with some additional information so that folks can, you know, have kind of a roadmap for the work of this group. So really excited about that, and just look forward to doing some good work with you all in the next few months. But we'll be in contact, and I hope that, yeah, everyone has a wonderful end to their year.
Thank you. Emily, I saw your hand.
Yeah, but Fabiola tied that up so well with a nice bow with her words. I didn't want to try to follow that, but I just want to also express my appreciation for folks. And, you know, as some of you know, I used to be part of the EAG, and I've kind of shifted a little bit to the community benefit space, but I really enjoy coming back here, and I just appreciate the way all of you are leaning in and the preparation that you bring. The great questions, and they're challenging. That's exactly what we need. And so just thank you for all of you and the way you've been engaging. And then thank you so much, Vicky, for you handled it well when I kind of put you on the spot. But I just also really appreciate the way that, you know, the way that you show up in the CBAG meetings. You really represent the EAG well, and what we hear here. You're always just raising the flag for equity consideration. So appreciate you. Serving on 2 committees is a lot. And so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So, and we, am I right that we'll have a pause in our meetings in January, and we will be back in February? So enjoy your holiday season and the end of the year, and we will see you in January. All the best, everyone. I mean, not January, February.
In February.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thanks,
wonderful
everyone.
break.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a good one.